And there's so much to unpack from President Trump's State of the Union address last night. Let's bring on our panel to dive further into the president's messaging surrounding the condition of our nation and the Democratic response. Joining us now are Taylor Hathorn and George Carrillo. Taylor is a visiting fellow at the Independent Women's Forum for American Safety and Security. George is a former Democratic gubernatorial candidate for Oregon and CEO of the Hispanic Construction Council. Great to have you both with us. Taylor, first, your thoughts. What did you make of the president's speech?
I thought it was an excellent speech. I did a pre-State of the Union panel with NTD the day prior where I talked about, I thought it was incredibly important for the president to give specific examples of how the economy is doing better under this administration, under this president than it was a year ago. And I talked about the importance of him explaining the reason that we have had the successes that we've had abroad and the importance of explaining why Iran, why this conflict is something that Americans need to be aware of. And I think that he did a pretty good job of that. And I would say, due to the CPS poll that was released earlier today, over 70% of Americans agree with me.
Well, very interesting, Taylor. Just a quick follow-up with you. Iran, Venezuela, no doubt, Ukraine. What about China?
Yeah, I mean, he really didn't touch on China very much, and that was not surprising to me. I wish that he would have talked a little bit more about China, but I think we're still in a little bit of a dance with China right now. I mean, there is no doubt that they are our greatest adversary at the moment, but we have so much connected to them in terms of our economy that I think that President Trump is still using the diplomatic and diplomacy and deterrence strategy rather than just going all in on them at this moment. But there's no doubt that China is the leading cause of many of the ailments behind our society. I mean, you just look at their involvement with the precursor chemical shipment on our southern border about the fentanyl crisis, and you can see just that.
Yes, and President Trump saying that fentanyl is down about 56% coming across the border due to his policies. Now, George, what about you? Give us the big picture of the speech from your perspective.
I think the president missed the mark. He really needed to talk to the middle of America. And the lack of his empathy when it comes to affordability and understanding what's happening in the country really hurt him. And it's going to definitely hurt them in the midterms. This was not a speech about the state of our union. It was more about the state of Trump and what he believes is reality. When there was just a lot of false claims, a lot of time that was wasted when he really needed to talk about the things that the American people wanted to hear about. Because right now he is not polling well. He is not doing well in the areas that he was elected for. When we talk about immigration, he's failing in that category. Affordability, he's failing in that category. He's failing the American people across the board, and he knows it, and his party knows it, and they're going to pay the price for it coming in the midterms.
George, let's unpack this. You said there were false claims. What were they?
Well, when he talks about how much he's done in the past year, when he says he and his administration have contributed $18 trillion of new gain into the GDP. That's not true. When he talks about historic murder rates over the past 125 years, that's not true. I can speak from personal experience of being a police officer and a sheriff deputy. You know, I've lived that life, and I can tell you that the rates are not at historical low levels. These are things that the president tries to claim because everything he says needs to be right, and that's not always the truth. And the American people really do need to fact check what he's saying.
I hear what you're saying, George. Let's go back to you, Taylor, for a moment. Trump says he's working to uphold law and order. He invited the mother of the Ukrainian refugee who was murdered in Charlotte, allegedly by a repeat offender released on no cash bail. Do you think he delivered a unifying message on law and order?
I mean, I do think he did. And I would also say back to my panelist is that President Trump is polling at about 44% right now, but he's polling at 52% on the border and immigration. So it's really not bad like they think it is. And the fact check that he gave about 125-year low on crime, the CBS fact checkers came out last night and said that that was in fact true. It is the historic lowest crime rate that we have had, murder rate, in over 125 years. I mean, so yeah, I think that, did he give a unifying message for criminals? No, he didn't. He gave a unifying message that the American people expect their government and their elected officials to stand up for their safety and security, primary, first and foremost. And I think the Democrats that were sitting on the other side of the aisle, I watched that speech last night, and I was kind of discouraged that none of them stood up, and many of them rebutted saying, well, Trump laid a trap for us. We weren't going to buy into that. I think that it would have done a lot of good for the Democratic Party leading into the midterms, actually, to have several of them stand up and say, you know what, we do think that this is our primary role and responsibility to protect the sanctity, safety, and security of Americans, but we want to work with the administration in making sure that there's a pathway to legal citizenship for those who did illegally initially cross the border, but who have contributed fairly and justly to our society. That is the method and the strategy that I would have gone with. But sitting down for a murdered woman who was killed savagely after escaping the Ukrainian-Russian war on a subway when she was just going home, I mean, that's shameful behavior from the Democrats. Absolutely shameful.
Thanks for your input, Taylor. George, I'd like to give you a minute to respond to your co-panelist.
Sure. I think it's shameful that right now we have an administration and we have a society that's not believe in checks and balances. We have ICE that's running around thinking that they can do whatever they want to American citizens, that they can mistreat people just because of their legal status. That is not what America's about. That's not what I signed up for when I defended this country as a United States Marine. It's not what I would do as a police officer patrolling the streets of our communities. Right now, what ICE is doing is they're overreaching their power. They're killing U.S. citizens. They are overreaching their authority. They're violating constitutional rights. And right now, what is shameful is that the president and his administration, especially Secretary Noem, is not holding agents accountable. This is the reason why there is distrust in our law enforcement. This is what separates communities. And these are the things that need to change. So yes, as Democrats, why would we stand up for something like that?
I'm hearing your point of view. Taylor, let's play some sound from last night, and we'll get your reaction to this really quick.
My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
As the nation knows, President Trump took decisive action in Operation Midnight Hammer to derail Iran's uranium enrichment. Is the world safer for it? And do you think most Americans who heard his speech see it this way?
So the world is definitely safer from what we did with Operation Midnight Hammer, but the problem is that we're not safe yet. A lot of American citizens don't understand that Iran, the IRGC, and the Ayatollah are the leading cause of terrorism around the world. I mean, they're the proxies, not just with Hezbollah and Hamas, but in Latin America too, supporting and filtering our drug trade up through Latin America into the United States. These proxies have killed thousands of American lives, including the lives of Marines, like with who probably served with my co-panelist. And so I think left, right, or center, we can all agree that Iran having nuclear weapons would be detrimental and destructive, not just to the United States, but to the global world order as a whole. I mean, these are not people that you can reason with. These are not a rational leadership or a rational, the Ayatollah is not a rational person, but the Iranian people are. Iran pre-1979 revolution looked a lot different than what it did today, and they could end up being a major ally of ours in the Middle East. And I look forward to the day to see that happen. But do I think that it is resonating with the American people? No, I don't think it is quite yet. They don't want another forever war. They don't want to be in the Middle East for another 20, 30 years. And so the president needs to continue to do a better job and a good job of explaining to the people that decisive military strategic action and strategic interventionism is not the same thing as war with Iran.
Understood, Taylor. And the Iranian people are just brilliant people, and alluding to what you're saying, victims of like the bloodshed that we saw in the protests there due to the Iranian regime. Now, George, welcome to respond to all this. And like the Iran nuclear issue, he touted other foreign policy decisions, like arresting then Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. It's a decision that ignited a lot of hope in many Venezuelans. Are actions like these resonating with Americans?
So sorry, I lost connection there for a brief second.
George might be coming back online. Let's see if we can get his comment. Yeah, go ahead, George.
Yes. So this is the one area that I do agree with the president. Iran should not have nuclear capabilities. What I believe hurts the president is that when he came out and said that everything was obliterated, that the job was completed, that was a misstatement by the president. And so right now, the American people just don't have I think, the energy to be faced with another forever war. But I do think we do need to take some very drastic steps. If diplomacy does not, we're not successful in that arena, then we do need to move forward. And I do believe that the actions that the president would be taking at that point need to happen. But when I think about other foreign policies, like what happened with Nicolas Maduro, that's something that needed to be done. I don't necessarily agree with the tactic of how it was done, especially with him being in power. There's other ways I think that the American people would have preferred, or I would have preferred to see him out of power. But now we are facing too many different conflicts right now between Cuba and Venezuela, and now what's happening in Mexico with the cartels and what's happening with Iran. We're really spreading ourselves really thin, and we really need to start thinking about what is the priority here. What is really going to keep the American people safe today? And that's something that I think that the president and his administration really need to hammer out, because it's too many moving pieces.
Great hearing both of your input. George Carrillo and Taylor Hathorn, thank you both for joining us.